Welcome everybody to a special edition of Crossing the Line.
3 specials, Greg.
Because it's just that special. We are overselling this. But we're not in our studio. Where are we today,
I noticed.
Lone Daddy? You tell me.
We are at the Metropolitan Pavilion.
Wow, big
on
place.
18th Street in Chelsea. And I gotta say, the energy here is palpable. It's very exciting.
And we're here at the Real Deal New York Forum 2025.
Correct. The who's who of real estate is here right now.
Then why are we here?
It's a great question, bro. It's a fantastic question. I don't know. We snuck in.
No, we're here to do podcasts where everybody else hobnobs, makes big deals. You know, we got Floyd Mayweather is going to be around later.
Money Mayweather.
Yeah.
That's the wrong guy to bump into.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But you better at least say a real apology.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that could be scary. Well, it's all about New York here. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about New York's economy. There's a mayoral race going on. It's already getting pretty exciting. And, you know, as always with New York City, the biggest problem is housing.
Yeah.
So the Economic Development Corporation of the city recently issued a very valuable report that had some interesting tidbits in it, some things you may not have known. So I'm just going to go over some of those briefly.
Don't assume that I don't know this stuff.
No, you know a lot of things.
I probably don't know this.
You know, I'm feeling a little insecure. I have no branding here. I don't have my mug. I don't have my bobbleheads. You have your Lone Daddy hat.
I got my Lone Daddy hat. It comes with
me
wherever I go.
With our invisible guest. We can see. All right, so interesting thing. New York City hit a record high of employment in March. 4.85 million employed. Now, I didn't know that. I feel bad as an economist. I didn't realize that.
That is an amazing stat.
And according to the EDC, New York City is continuing to lead the nation in jobs added year over year. So that's also good. It's showing that the city is back. We've heard
New York
it a
City
lot.
employment is typically very high. I mean, look, it's an expensive city to live in. It's hard to live here if you're not employed.
But it's also slow to come back because it's more expensive to hire people. Office space is more expensive.
Yes.
The unemployment rate is a little higher here than the national number. It's 5.1 versus 4.2. That's normally the case, although it wasn't the case right before COVID. New York City actually had a lower unemployment rate. But with COVID hitting us harder than most other places in the country, that's not a surprise to anybody, I would think.
Yeah.
You know, we'd be a little slower to come back. The thing that's interesting is, you know, people wonder about office space. Who's going to lease it? Everybody wants to work from home, or, you know, they want a remote. They don't want to live in the area. But the office vacancy rate has fallen the last 4 straight quarters. It's still sitting at about double what it was before the pandemic, but it's still, the vacancy rate's only 14.5%. That's not bad.
And it's not surprising based on what you've been hearing from CEOs of different companies. Jamie Dimon
saying, get back to work.
Get back to work, get back in the office. I was listening to someone speak about this, a CEO of a company saying, you're working on a project and we need someone to help out. We're going to go to the person that's in the office that can kind of come into that meeting and help us, as opposed to someone that's at home working from their laptop. So you are seeing more of an emphasis of people going into the office, not just here, everywhere, but specifically here as well.
And it's been led by the Class A properties. You know, these are the ones that the Wall Street firms have. And I think it was the CEO of Goldman Sachs said, we don't do billion-dollar deals over the phone. You know, we do them in person.
Right.
So
there's something to that as well.
No, people want to see people face to face.
Exactly. Relationships are built face to face, and that's a big part of business.
But think about it. There's people that were hired 5 years ago who probably haven't been into their office yet.
It's very true.
Or moved into the area.
Very true. It's more common now, especially when I speak to clients, for example. The overwhelming majority have some kind of flexible schedule, where they're in the office maybe 3 days a week, they're at home twice a week. That seems to be more of the norm, with more people kind of gravitating more towards in the office.
So speaking of whether or not they're in the office, another thing, office leasing activity is at 91% of pre-pandemic levels. That's amazing.
That's surprising, I gotta be honest.
I think it's the biggest area for the leasing activity is the trophy buildings, the Class A space. Class B and below space is not doing as well. So talk about return to office. There's a couple of different people that put out these statistics. Castle Systems, they do the key cards, has it at 54%. Rebney has it at 67%. any way you slice it, it's as high as it's basically been since the pandemic.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting. The retail vacancy rate, because we always talk about how high it seems to be, but it's actually not. According to EDC, it's at 4% right now, which is not that much higher than the 3.2% it was beforehand.
It's really interesting. I feel like if we spoke to people even here who are real estate professionals, they may not even realize these stats.
I think that's why EDC puts this stuff out.
Yeah. It's surprising.
Well, these were other
for
surprising. So these are the percentage of pre-pandemic levels of each of these indicators. Broadway attendance is at 94.3% of what it was pre-pandemic. Look, maybe the shows have gotten better. I don't know. I'm being told by the lovely Lena that we have to take a break right now for this important message.
Your dream home is closer than you think. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here to get you the perfect loan to match your perfect home. From first-time home buyers to seasoned homeowners, I've helped clients make their moves with confidence. Ready for a smooth, stress-free home buying experience? Let's get you moving today. Call me and let's turn those dreams into keys.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
And we're back.
All right, so Broadway attendance 94.3% pre-pandemic levels.
Do you have a favorite Broadway show, Greg?
I haven't been to one in a while. I
haven't
have
been
to
to one in a while
admit it. I like to go every once in a while. It's amazing though, considering how expensive it is, because you want to eat beforehand. It's a lot involved going to a Broadway show.
Yeah, for sure.
Hotel occupancy 97.6%. We talk about tourism being back all the time. Although with the trade war going on right now, that you hear a lot of talk that it's keeping visitors from coming here. I don't see that. The areas that are crowded with visitors seem to still be so, but maybe those people planned a long time ago. So, subway ridership 75.4% of pre-pandemic levels. That sounds pretty good when you consider that there's not that many. Your return to office isn't 75%,
Right.
but obviously the MTA needs a lot of money. The governor in the budget is now jacked up the payroll tax to help pay for their $60 billion plus capital plan.
Yep.
The head of the MTA said that he can find somewhere to cut to save a couple billion. The question is, why didn't you do that already? Were you just saving that for a rainy day?
It's a great question. If we can find them, we'll pull them aside and we'll see if we can get them on the show.
So, Street Easy has a rent index, which says that rents we know have been skyrocketing, are 23% higher than they were pre-pandemic. That's a New York City average. Home prices are kind of flat, which has been interesting because we went from a pandemic when we couldn't sell anything for months, show anything for months, and then we had this, and prices didn't fall, and then we had the greatest year and a half we've ever seen. Prices didn't go up. Now they're starting to drift a little lower in Manhattan, but the outer borough is still doing pretty strong.
Right.
So let's talk about housing. One bit of good news is housing completions were up 22% in 2024. We know the one thing that we always need here is housing.
Inventory is still a problem.
Well,
I was at an office yesterday speaking to agents, and that was still one of the number one issues.
And it's funny, when I always point out how much inventory there is, they always get the same response back. Nobody wants that. It's all overpriced.
Right.
Or it's all unrenovated. People don't want unrenovated
Correct.
properties.
You want the right kind of inventory.
But,
Yes.
Being that 70% roughly of the people that live in New York City and Manhattan are renters, the fact that the rental vacancy rate is, as of the last housing and vacancy survey, is 1.4%. That's incredibly low. But when you think about it, 41% of the rental units in New York City are rent stabilized.
Yeah.
And what do we know about that? You can't get those apartments.
Correct.
Plus, a lot of them are being warehoused by the landlords because they can't afford to do the renovations because they can't recoup any of that in the rate. in the rents that they're charging.
And many of the people who are in rent-stabilized apartments can afford
a market rate.
a more expensive apartment, for sure.
But with the shift of power in New York State that kept some of these changes we saw several years ago, that now it's virtually impossible to deregulate an apartment that's regulated. So the issue, though, for New York City is the population of New York City is about just under 8.3 million right now, and we have a housing problem. It's forecast to rise to 9 million 10 years from now, and 9.5 million by 2055, according to the city Department of City Planning.
We'll be on like our 5,000th episode by then.
If
right?
I'm still working here, we'll see. I'm going to be kind of old in 2055. You not so much. You might be lone granddaddy by then. Who knows?
Possible.
So the mayor has released his budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which starts July 1st, which includes about $25 billion for affordable housing. The question a lot of us are asking, is that enough?
Right.
We hear a lot about the progress made in affordable housing, but it doesn't seem to make a big enough dent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and with obviously we had a lot of immigration into New York City. That will probably slow down with the stricter enforcement of the laws. So I don't know. You hear the mayor touting about the records that they've set last year for progress. Obviously, a lot of the mayoral candidates have their own ideas about this, so we'll see what happens. I don't. To me, a plan is nothing but a plan until we actually see the nuts and bolts of it.
They need to execute it, for
Now,
sure. Government's all about how they allocate their funds, and
which are limited, like any of our funds.
Correct.
Unlike the federal government, New York City can't deficit spend.
right.
And look, the City of Yes housing opportunity that the mayor set up last year, they expect it to add up to 80,000 new housing units over the next 15 years, which are using zoning reforms. There's no or very little willingness for the city or state to offer tax incentives to build housing anymore, unless the vast majority of it is affordable.
Right.
So that kind of makes it tough for the middle class to live here, don't you think? Like, they seem to get lost in the shuffle.
For sure. And that always seems to be the case.
Right. And a lot of things, it's better to be rich or not so rich.
And get the incentive,
and get benefits from that, right?
Exactly.
So we used to have 421A, which used to give benefits for any kind of housing, deeper benefits if 20% were affordable. That was then changed, and now that has expired, we have 485X, which is funny. At this forum last year, we had a former deputy mayor and an expert in affordable housing say that this was not going to get the job done. Part of the reasons is the wage requirements, which can go up to over $70 an hour as a minimum wage. Once you get above 100-unit projects, all of these stricter rules kick in, which is why virtually all of the projects that have taken advantage of 485X have been under 100 units.
Right.
And that hurts.
Right.
But we have this new thing, 467M. It's all these, and these are sections of the law. That's where they get these from. For conversion, commercial to resi, as they call it, which actually
They should give them your names, right?
I don't know.
So it's more fun to talk about.
I guess, but we've come.
It's all this legalese.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Well, we have J51, we had 421G, we have a whole bunch of stuff.
Exactly.
But this incentive offers anywhere from 25 to 35-year benefits, and it does not have the strict requirements. So what would you tell the mayoral candidates that they need to do to get more housing built? Because, look, we're also running out of spaces to build housing here in Manhattan. And what advice
I think
would you give them?
from getting more housing built, from our perspective, it's what can you do to make, again, from the mortgage side that I sit on, what can you do to make financing more available for people? There are all these new guidelines with the DOB, with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that make it harder to get financing for buildings. And the DOB, based on Local Law 11, another one of these laws, if a building doesn't adhere to Local Law 11,
Right.
the DOB will slap an unsafe designation on that building, and then Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac will not be able to lend on that building. That makes it impossible, not impossible, but very difficult for people to get financing on that building, which hurts housing. It hurts people's ability to get financing, and it hurts the
ability to sell your unit, right?
hurts the ability to sell the unit. The value in that unit drops because you can't cast as wide a net for potential buyers. So I think that's the first thing that they should do. I guarantee you the DOB is not communicating with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac when they decide to implement these laws.
Right.
The second thing I would say is we have mansion tax, we have mortgage tax here in New York, right? Anything over $1 million, you're going to pay a 1% mansion tax. If it goes over $2 million, then it's 1.25, and it scales up. $1 million apartment today is not what it once was. You get a one-bedroom for $1 million.
Actually, the median resale price in Manhattan is $1 million.
Right.
So people, a little over $1 million, but that's become middle now.
So
anywhere else in the country, well, there's other major cities too where it's expensive, but most other places, that's a mansion.
yeah. So
Hence the term mansion tax. That's not really applicable to what the median price is, in many parts of New York City.
correct. And maybe they change that to a flat fee of $10,000 regardless of what the price is. Over $1 million, it's $10,000 flat, and that's it. Or they change it entirely. But those types of costs are ones that make it very difficult, specifically for first-time home buyers,
Right.
to buy a home. And then on top of that, you slap on mortgage recording tax.
Well, and you have a lot of these taxes, like transfer taxes, hit you at the state and city level.
Correct.
And, the problem
You're getting hit twice.
Right. The problem the city has, though, is it has to go to the state.
Yes.
They can't just change these laws. The
Right.
state has to change them.
Yep.
And, we haven't had the best relationships over the last bunch of administrations between the mayor and the governor.
Yep.
But now we may have a mayor that was a governor. Who knows? Anything's possible. But I think the problem is, look, they don't want to offer incentives for market rate building. Okay, that's all right, but I would reconsider it because, again, all you see now are luxury condos being built in many places and affordable housing, a lot of rentals. If the middle class wants to own something, the options are very limited.
Yep.
New York City does have 5 boroughs. There is something for everybody. But people who want to live close to work are going to have a problem buying an apartment like that. So I would say consider offering some incentives for middle class housing.
100%. 100%. And speaking of the middle class, those are the ones typically that are going to have a mortgage.
Right.
Right? So if the mortgage recording tax could be just around 2% of someone's loan amount. When you go to refinance, you have to pay that mortgage tax again. Now you can get something called a CEMA.
Can't you do an assignment?
You can do an assignment, which is called a CEMA. There's still fees for that, and that can take a lot of time to get done. So if you're in an environment where interest rates are changing, you might, by the time you get that CEMA in, the rate could go up. So timing that could be very, very challenging.
Now with co-ops, you're not paying that.
Co-ops are not paying that. So rates don't have to drop all that much.
But they're looking for ways to make co-ops pay when that happens.
Exactly.
They're looking for ways to tax things more.
For sure.
And we also have property tax reform. The commission issued their initial suggestions right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
A lot of them would dramatically change. There is a lot of inequity in the property tax system. And that needs to be addressed.
Right, for sure.
But it's also very scary to people when they think of how much their taxes could go up.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I think that, rigidly saying we're not going to offer any benefits to developers, you're going to get less.
Yeah.
And any building, any housing is helpful.
Yeah.
And I think, too, that the outer boroughs are the places where the most opportunity is there. Because again, the land costs are very expensive in Manhattan. Good luck trying to find available sites. And it takes years to assemble these things.
And then one thing we haven't talked about yet is crime.
Well,
which is a big thing. It's a big topic of conversation.
Right.
That, you know, if someone's moving to a certain area, they want to make sure it's going to be safe.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
I had a client whose daughter went to NYU, was graduating, and wanted to buy a home. She's originally from Maryland, and her father, who was going to help with the purchase, came to New York for a week, and in the area that she wanted to buy, he kind of blocked off different times of the day to like scout out the area. One of those times was like 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. He's like, I'm going to stay up, I'm going to walk around the area, which is not the best time.
No.
And he was not happy and told her, we're not buying right now. So I think like that is a really important thing. We talked about subway ridership, which is higher than you would expect. But at the same time, if people aren't feeling safe riding the subway, they're not going to want to invest in real estate here as well. It's a really important piece that I think is a major topic of conversation. And I know anyone who's going to be governor, this is top of mind.
Well, and it's also the price of riding the subway has gone up. It's going to go up more because they have a $60 billion thing. Who knows if payroll tax is going to supply all this money that they need to keep their infrastructure going. Sure. I had a hard time getting here this morning because Amtrak had a power issue in Penn Station. Like, this stuff happens all the time. The infrastructure is way too low.
Yep.
Look, there's been a lot of progress made in crime. The new police commissioner seems to be doing a really good job, has gone back to some of the old methods. But when you have a reputation like that, like any reputation, it's very hard to get rid of.
For sure.
And people don't, it's almost like we forgot the days when we could say we were the safest, large city in the world. And that's what has led to the boom. New York City has shown an amazing amount of resilience. It will always come back.
Yeah.
I always say, don't bet against New York City, just its sports teams. Although we're very happy about the Knicks. We're enjoying that greatly. Hopefully they win tonight.
Big game tonight, for sure.
All the favorites are losing, but we could spend a whole podcast talking about the NBA playoffs.
You're right, though. I mean, I moved here in 2009, and back then, like, it wasn't even really a thought in terms of crime. You know, walking around at, you know, late at night or taking a subway past midnight wasn't really a difficult choice to make. Now it is. It's one of those choices that, especially if you're young, if you're in your early 30s or late 20s, you know, you're not sure who's going to be on that subway ride, and you see less of a police presence. Whereas back in the day, you would see police on subways all the time or in the area. Now you don't see it as much.
Well, they've tried these blitzes, but when you announce when you're going to do it, it's like they just wait.
Right.
Look, every major city in America has a lot of these issues. New York doesn't stand out. But as a financial capital of the world,
and a densely populated city, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, a very vertical city. I think that we need to get, you know, and again, the commissioner seems to be doing a very good job. We'll see what happens with whomever the next mayor is.
Yeah.
Hopefully that those policies will continue, because we all want a safe place to live. And look, most cities and towns become a lot less safe after midnight. But, you know, that then translates here. If I have to take public transportation instead of a car, that leads me to another concern.
Yep, for sure.
So, and we need businesses to be here to keep the subways funded so they can hire more police and have the infrastructure so that these things are not breaking down all the time. Plus, everything goes so over budget. You know, I got to take the Long Island Road into Grand Central now to go to my office. That was billions of dollars over budget and years late.
You're right, though, that past midnight things can be unsafe, but this is also the city that never sleeps.
Never sleeps. That is correct.
And it's a late night city that a lot of young people partake in.
Right.
Business meetings that have, you'll go to a dinner and it'd be a 3-hour long dinner. I mean, that's kind of commonplace.
Right.
And you want to make sure that it's safe.
Well, plus people are spending a lot of money to live here. They expect services.
Absolutely.
And they want a safe area. They want good transportation. They want better schools.
Yeah.
And the city takes in an awful lot of money. And luckily for New York City, they haven't had budget problems because their biggest source of revenue is property tax.
Yeah.
And property tax is a fairly reliable stream of revenue for them. Because the one thing about property tax is they don't care whether or not you can pay it. It's based on the value of your property.
Mm-hmm.
There are tax breaks for people that are senior citizens and other ones, but at the same time, they don't care that you may have lost your job because it's the value of the property that's taxed.
Right.
So having that stream is good for New York City, whereas New York State relies much more on income taxes.
Right.
Which have been good. One of the things we found out about last year was Wall Street paid out almost $50 billion in bonuses.
Bonuses, yep.
Think of the tax revenue that creates. Think of how it supports the economy. But we can't count on Wall Street having a great year every year.
Right.
We're kind of seeing this year that things have gotten better lately, but you're reminded, sometimes the stock market is incredibly volatile.
Right.
The other thing, too, we haven't talked about, and we have a couple minutes left, is how is the relationship between New York City and the federal government going to work? Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of concern about monies that may not come to New York City that they used to get. I don't know.
The administration had strong opinions about the congestion pricing.
Yes, and congestion pricing is taking in about $50 million a month. Right. It is lowered.
We felt the difference.
Yeah, I mean, the traffic, everything that so many times when the government comes up with an idea, it never works out the way. It's like, hey, we're going to give tax breaks for this stadium. It's going to raise all this revenue and we're going to make money on the deal. And then it never happens.
And this is one of those things where you're walking around.
It seems to be working as that. It's raising money. There's less congestion, less pollution.
Right.
That was the whole idea behind it.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. I don't know. There's like a couple of months reprieve on this as they kind of try to work things out.
Right.
We'll see what happens. That's the thing. You've got to stay tuned because, with an election coming and a lot of people upset about a lot of things, a trade war, a volatile stock market.
A lot of uncertainty for sure.
But New York City, again, has shown it survived fiscal problems, crime, drugs, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, horrible sports teams. It has survived all that, and it will survive going forward. Well, I think that's so. We have a minute and 52 seconds left.
If it survives here, it can survive anywhere, right?
Do you have any closing comments or jokes, Lone Daddy? We're leaving him speechless. Ray, that doesn't happen that often.
No, look, I'm bullish on New York. I'm excited about New York. Again, from where it was during the pandemic, you saw so many articles from prominent New York City people who are saying New York will never be the same. And now we're a few years later, and based on the statistics that you just read, we are on our way back. So that is really exciting. And from my end of things, where I'm talking to prospective home buyers on a daily basis, people want to live here. People want to be here. There. Correct. 100%.
And you know what? If you need some optimistic words about New York City, come to an event like this where you have real estate brokers, in the mix. They'll tell you how busy they are, how many people want to live here.
It's distracting, by the way, being in this seat, because I see everything that's happening.
See, I only
There's
see
so many
you and Ray.
beautiful people over here walking by, and it's like a lot of stimulus happening, Greg.
See, when he said beautiful people, I thought he meant me, but I guess not.
It's the people behind you.
Oh, sure. That's okay. Well, see, I'm not distracted. That's why
you look great, Greg.
Yeah.
You always do. You put a jacket on today, which is new.
Well, as an economist, I do have some suits in the closet.
Yeah.
I don't wear them that much anymore. That's one of the good changes that has happened over the years.
Fashion trends have changed.
I never understood why somebody thought it'd be a good idea to tie something around their neck and wear it all day.
Yeah.
Look, ties went first, then suits went. So, but we're trying to be all formal and professional here. I don't know if we succeeded.
We are
but
playing
we
the
did our
part.
best.
We're
So
playing the
anyhow, that's it. I want to thank Scott for riding shotgun with me as always. Loan Daddy himself, CrossCountry Mortgage, excellent company, and Ray and Lena and everybody else here, and all the people behind us for distracting Scott so I could confuse him. And thanks again for coming, crossing the line. Sorry, see now I'm hearing all the noise. Thanks again for crossing the line with us, and we'll see you again soon.